6:30, so I'll wrap together. We'll get our meeting started. We've got two different things to accomplish tonight. We want to talk as a work group about where we're at with everything, and then we're going to adjourn that meeting, which I'm chair of, and then Paul, who's the new chair, has got some planning and zoning committee work that we have to, commission work that we have to do. And you guys are willing, you're more than welcome to stay around for that if you want, but we have two different meetings tonight to get everything done. So the first part's mine. Monday was not that long ago, but I thought we'd really kind of talk about that and talk about what we learned. Based on what we learned, how do we want to finish out this project? And just kind of see where we're at. So I'll open it up to the floor. What went well? What didn't go well? What we learned? What do we still need to learn? That kind of stuff. So speak now, or hold your peace.
Richard, just my comment, I feel like the forum was a good representation. I think of the general populace. Well, I feel honored to be able to listen to the points of view that were shared Monday night. That was very good.
Well, I thought it was interesting that there's an article about this the night in the Linn County News, and there was part of an editorial about us. And I think that the reporting was accurate. Jackie Taylor was the reporter, and she did a good job of describing what went on. And I was real pleased with that. And then she said, it's a pretty good example of how government really ought to work. So I was pretty proud about that too. So yeah. I figured we'd be there till past midnight. By golly, we were done in an hour and a half. So, and everybody that wanted to got to speak. So I don't know, in hindsight, we may have said, okay, you got 3 or 4 or maybe 5 minutes, but you know what? We didn't know what we know at that point in 2 minutes. And I thought everybody was so respectful of the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just, and I noticed that a lot of people had time. I mean, they had the speech written, and boy, it went right down to the second. They had already they worked on it, they timed it, and it was very good. So, yeah.
I think there was such a turnout with the written testimony too, that they felt some people wanted to read it, and some people was like, "You've got it."
Yeah. Well, just compliments to the citizens of Linn County. They behaved well. They talked well. To me, it was just a good experience. So, thank you for everybody that helped make that the success.
I too think it was a good representative. I thought everybody did really well.
Yeah.
Thought you ran the meeting well. I think we would have been there till 2 a.m. had the written testimonies shown up, had we not allowed that.
Yeah.
With over 200 testimonies.
Right.
Up there.
Right.
So I think that worked well. Looking back on it, as far as changes, I don't think, I can't come up with any changes as far as how we would have done it differently. I thought it went well.
Other comments?
Should we talk about the written testimony? Has Darren sent that out yet?
Yeah, it's on. SharePoint.
Oh, okay, I missed it. I'd propose that, just like the public forum, we need to make that written testimony public information. Some way, somehow.
Yeah.
Whether it be on a website or whatever, because it was designed to take place with somebody that didn't want to speak.
Yeah. I agree with that. The rest of the group feel the same way?
I agree. I've seen other counties do it, and I think that it's very neat.
Do you know how they do it? I mean, do they put it?
So a lot of theirs was where their like regulations or findings, anything would be at. So like it was under their planning and zoning. Some of them had a prohibition, but some of them, it was how they wrote the regulations also. And it was just their testimonies, and they had a link to a video that you could watch, and it just had, you could click on it, and it was just like one PDF that had everybody listed together.
Okay.
I read through every one of them. I just thought it was very neat because you can go through there and kind of see how everyone felt that way. And I liked it.
Okay. Darren, that's something you and I can work on and figure out what we need to do. Probably need to get Chris involved, some too, the IT guy.
So speaking of Chris, I didn't view the whole thing, but I went back and watched part of the YouTube live, and it came across very well.
Oh, good,
You
good.
could hear everybody and see everybody, and
Yeah.
it worked out, that part of it worked out well.
Well, we need to do a kudos to that, to Chris and his folks that did that. And the people at the Prairie View Performing Arts Center. I mean, they did a great job. They just were so helpful, so.
I know from what I've seen, I don't see that I would have changed anything. I thought the planning and zoning did great on the message put out beforehand and during the meeting itself. I thought the live was great. I thought they did a really good job with the clock up there, the sound. I think cutting the mic off was a great idea because I think that kept it a little cleaner because otherwise someone would have tried to finish their sentence and before you know it, that's pretty long. So I really thought all of that was great. And kudos to the whole county. I mean, Sean was up there having people sign in. He was very informational of what that was. I just think all in all, it went really well.
I was,
Nothing that I was not impressed with.
everything met beyond my expectations. And Darren, I mean, I know you were back behind the scenes doing a bunch of that. So we all want to express our gratitude toward you. So thank you. Yeah. And the rest of the people that helped you from the staff. You guys did a great job. So, yeah. Yeah, the 2-minute thing, I didn't know how that'd go out, but what I emphasized was it's fair to everybody. You know, everybody gets 2 minutes and we can't let you go over because then we're not being fair about it. And they were so good about,
Well, the microphone going off,
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that kept everybody in line.
Right.
They knew
yeah,
Once they
they
got
weren't
there,
going to be able
no
to
more.
stumble over 10, 15, 30 seconds.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, when that mic went off, it was done.
It wasn't interesting. It went off several times when there was only 1 or 2 words left.
Right.
They'd had it
They practiced it at home.
right.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was very cool. Yeah. Yeah. And I was just really pleased that everybody could just feel free to state their position on the thing. It's very good. Yep. Okay.
I do think, I mean, just some dotting i's and crossing t's, and I know that's work that Darren's going to end up doing, but we don't know what the commissioners want from us out of the meeting as far as like some sort of count or something. I mean, the whole reason for the sign up thing. But we're going to have to do some sorting and, you know, like, for example, my wife emailed and then she decided to come and talk. So she signed up on the form and she sent in an email. And so Darren's going to have to like, you know, figure those things out. My suspicion is that what would be most useful to the commissioners is a tally of some sort. And we just want that to be as accurate as possible. So that is some turning that's going to have to do apart from anything that might get put up on the web so that we can report to them. Again, assuming, because I don't know, if you guys know, let me know, because I haven't heard watching the meetings that they want XYZ from the meeting other than, you know, showing up and taking the pulse. We'll just have to see what they say. But the best thing we can give them is all the information we have.
Right.
And to make that as accurate as possible. So I know that's work that Darren's going to have to do.
Do you think it's necessary? I mean, they can see, we could just tell them that they don't have to like necessarily, I mean, unless you think it's important to where, hey, some of these do overlap, but here's the people that wrote in and here's the people that showed up. I just don't want Darren to have to go through. I already did some of that on just the write-ins of, you know, what cities and everything, and it does take a long time. So like, if they're not necessarily wanting it, there's no reason to waste his time.
I don't know.
Well, the thing we can do is ask. I mean,
We don't have a bad start already. I mean,
right.
you've got, 280 emails or something like that. You got that already, and you might have a duplicate or two in there, but
So since they didn't come into the website here, are they verifiable or?
So the ones that Ally brought in was just a stack of, there was no email address or anything on them.
So how are they verifiable?
I can't verify.
Okay.
I think we just read those at face value.
Names.
I agree with you.
So what do you mean?
They
by
have to
that?
have
Like,
their name, their address, their
Yeah.
relationship, their position, and their written testimony.
Yeah, and it does have that on. I just can't, like the ones that I received, it's got the email address, where it came from.
So that's just as verifiable as anybody that got up and spoke. They've got their name, where they're from, their address.
So if there's like duplicates and things like that, same person twice.
Well, yeah, before you walked in,
Right.
Paul mentioned that.
Okay.
There may have to be some vetting of the duplicates because some people may have written in and spoke.
And is there an age level?
But David, what I hear you saying,
We didn't specify an age level. I mean, there could have been an 8-year-old that got up and spoke on Monday night. We would have listened to him. So we didn't put a requirement in there as far as age or registered voter or anything like that.
so I think we just take it at face value and make our assessments from there.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to run through them and make sure there's no duplicates like Paul was talking. But I think for the most part, you're right. You take it at face value.
I mean, I know, one thing I did notice was there are some in multiple categories. There was somebody that, the same person did a neutral and a one category other proponent, I don't know what it was, but
There are.
so it just may have been the drop down duty waddy goofed up or something. But at the end of the day, their name's in there twice in two different categories. And
Yeah, so, those kind of.
just, the problem is we don't know from the commissioners what their expectations are, or we could be a little more clear. But,
I would recommend in future times, if anything like this does come up, that the county do its own job form, because I think it's a very clean, that's how those were done, and it's very clean. It can be posted on the website. It saves people from mailing, from emailing, where it's very clean and would help Darren in the sorting of all of it tremendously. So, I don't know much about the job form, but
So
I think
I'll
it's a very
work
clean
on,
version.
trying to sort through all that, try to find duplicates or whatever. Not to skip to the next part, but I'm gonna say this, Mark was gonna send me information, obviously he haven't had time to do it. The next couple of days are a rain day. I'm assuming would be rain days for you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're available. I've got meetings for most of the day tomorrow. Friday, I've got a 3:00 meeting that's a 2-hour meeting. So I don't know if like Friday morning, you've got time to come in, or I can meet you somewhere and we can go over the stuff that you was gonna send me. That way I can get started on putting together a format of the things that you would like to see added. If you've got time to do that.
I'll be going to state Friday, but I can definitely email stuff back and forth.
Okay.
So, one of our kids qualified, so I gotta take him out there.
Darren, if you need any help on those names, I mean, I'd be glad to.
You got the email. I may take you up on that. Just tomorrow.
It may be something as simple as just throwing them in a spreadsheet, and sorting them,
Right.
and I'd be glad to do.
Okay.
Okay, so that was my other agenda item for us tonight. But I do want to talk about kind of our meeting schedule and pattern from here on out until we get done with this thing. I felt, I know I pushed a lot of people and you weren't really ready to be pushed like I did, but at least we established kind of what the opposition wanted and what the proponents and opponents wanted. So we know what the gap is now. Darren's got that, but he hadn't had time to put that in any kind of writing. But once we get that done, I think then we talk about where we want to come down on a place in the code that we've been working on. Understanding that there may be a possibility that this never happens, but I think we've got to have that code. Everybody kind of I think agrees that we need to have something in writing as a backup to if this thing does stay on the books and we just don't go for a full.
And we have come to consensus on several issues. I mean,
Yes. Yeah. But we still got more to do.
Sorry, Rich. The ones that have been coming to consensus are in a red line document.
okay.
Yeah.
And I think that I've sent those out.
Yeah, you did. I've got it here.
I think the hope is just to consolidate the talking points to one place instead of, we're basically through it,
Yeah.
but there was other things that you guys had on your list, which we want to consider.
Right.
But if we can just put all those into one place and then we can drive down it, and kind of sweep.
I was kind of wondering if we could go around the room and go over any, like, quick details that we wanted to change.
Okay.
'Cause I have a couple, and I just wondered if anyone else did.
Are you guys ready to do that?
I don't know that I'm prepared to do that tonight.
Sorry, what?
I don't know that I'm prepared to do that tonight, but
Or just
you
anything
can go ahead and,
We can do first round of
you're
it.
ready.
from the top of your head.
So you want to start?
One thing that I noticed is the concern for wildlife, so I wanted a 1 mile buffer around the state and federal wildlife refuge, and also a 1 mile buffer around incorporated cities, because I've seen that a couple different places, people have concerns about it being near cities. So that's technically two that kind of goes together. Wildlife corridors and the exact type of corridor, I think we can determine per cup. But I think requiring some sort of ingress and egress for wildlife would be
Some standards.
some standards. And that could be, I think Learway said they cut off the bottom half of certain parts of the fence to let deer go through. Or I've seen staggered fencing, and so they overlap, and so the animals can go through. And also on many projects, I've seen it's called wildlife fencing. It's about 1 by 1 square instead of the 6 by 6.
Right. So
So foxes and raccoons and whatnot can make it through.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yes. And a wildlife study to determine how many, what kind of wildlife, how many go through in a day-to-day basis. And then, let's see, some sort of glare mediation. So be it whatever is required for the cup, it could be film that goes over it to reduce glare. It could be however they orient the panels. It kind of depends on how the property is laid out and whatnot. And also the film can help with the lake effect. That's of the waterfall.
Right.
Trying to think of the right wording.
So it's not like.
Yeah, so it doesn't look like water. And one thing I noticed that I don't think we put in, is I was thinking maybe after 2 to 3 years, after you plant the vegetative buffer, after that they must maintain at least 80% coverage. I don't think we got that in there.
David and I worked on that early, and I wrote some things up, and we kind of went on some other topics, but let me dig that back up. And Dave, you and I can do some more work on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think it was specified,
Right.
but it seems like something that would need to be put in there.
Yeah.
Especially, I don't know how, depends on the kind of trees, I guess, as well, on how many die the first year or so. And I don't think it would be right to say you have to maintain 80% coverage that first year, because what if whole chunk die off and then I don't feel right penalizing them, because that's not their fault technically.
If they don't water it, it is.
Yes, true. If it's obviously their fault, that's the thing. But
Actually, the guy David and I met with talked about doing some different plantings in different years to kind of get the stand that you want. You're not gonna have erosion and you're gonna have enough ground cover and it's animal friendly and all that. So, yeah. I'll finish on that. Good job.
And it's
All right.
5 things.
I'd like to see a greater buffer zone for a military highway, you know, didn't really pay much attention to it till we took our tour,
Yeah.
you know. But,
Have you got a distance in mind?
yeah, I do, probably, probably may back into Lacey. But, you know, that highway has changed a little bit over years.
Yeah.
In location, you know, and, where would we be at? Would they accept the new highway as a buffer zone, or are they gonna, we're gonna have to go back to the old highway type thing? And I don't think there's much of a difference between the new and the old there.
Yeah. In that area?
Right.
Yeah, okay. But I think we'd be using the new ones. I mean, that's what we got. That's
Yeah,
what it
right,
says.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And for your buffer, would you not want any solar panels to be visible from the highway, or would it be half mile or?
You know, it probably depends because you've got,
Certain areas that are flat and you can
Yeah,
see ways, and certain areas
exactly,
aren't.
you know, so I think it almost have to be I'm a mile or mile, half mile, whatever, you know.
The Cheyenne Bottoms that just had their forum, they were talking about a 1 mile setback from scenic byways. We're doing a dive into that to see if that is a state issued
Oh,
thing.
Okay.
So that might solve that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think there's anywhere that you can see more than a mile unless like you're on top of a hill.
David,
I'm kind of scrambling here. I'm not.
You want me to
prepared, But I've.
come back to you?
Just a couple things. I don't know if we've talked about noise. We've come up with a consensus on noise, but my thought is maximum of 60 decibels at the non-participating property line. And then, I'd like to see the notice of, the CUP be broader than just 1,000 feet. I think the current regulations are 1,000 feet or any bordering property. I'd like to see that increased significantly to 3 miles. So within 3 miles of any development, the landowners that are not participating, our homes are notified.
You're talking about on notification.
Yep. Yep.
I'm not sure how much they would have to pay for an application fee, but I'm guessing that money would be incorporated into the application
Yes,
fee.
it would have to be the developers, at the developer's expense,
Yeah.
for sure.
I'm just wondering if we have to raise that fee.
So that's how conditional use permits are set up now. They have to pay for the publication. That's part of their application fee, publication and mailings.
Okay. And Bruce, go ahead.
the decibel, I forget what the sound is, but how loud is 60 decibels?
It's like a outdoor air conditioner.
Okay. That's what I remember somebody saying. I just couldn't remember that was, yeah. And then,
I may have some more, so, but I just.
okay, all right.
I'm not ready tonight, so.
Well, we'll do what we can tonight, and I think we're still gonna be meeting for a while, don't you guys? All right, Emily.
I'm taking, I've mentioned it before with the Spencer County, their documents. They have a visual impact evaluation report, a noise evaluation report, and a telecommunication and wireless signals report.
You want that included in the CUP? just. for-
I want it included in the regulations. I
I
think
mean,
that,
that they have to get that before,
correct,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, there was three, visual impact, noise, and what?
And
Visual.
the telecommunications said that they make sure that if they put something in, that you still have cell phone service and you can use your internet.
I'm not opposed to that.
So, okay, so they really have to put a tower pretty close to there.
No, all I know is that if you're putting in these massive fields and you've got your, all your equipment in there, that it can have some interference with the current cell towers and stuff like that,
Or
so.
even people's television, stuff like that.
Okay, all right. Anything else, Emily?
A lot, but that's where I'll start.
We'll do one second round to catch up. Mark?
I do have some notes. I don't know exactly where we're at, so like if possible, if we could do a red line before the next meeting, so that way I know what has or hasn't been covered would help greatly. Just so I don't sit up here and repeat the same thing.
Right,
over and over.
right.
I do think one thing I think we talked about the extraordinary event. I think you guys just kind of talked, there is a solar glare hazard analysis that can be done before. I don't know if we covered this, but I have read where a lot of other regulations do require the power purchase agreement and interconnection agreement. I'd like to see that. And then property value impact assessment that can be done beforehand. So like we would have that in the regulations, that it would be done before the conditional use permit would be
So help me understand how would that work?
well, you actually hire a third-party company that can come in and then give a assessment on, let's just say, if you got two houses here and they're gonna build it here, they would come in and do an assessment of that whole neighborhood and then say if this could negatively impact, so if this solar farm here could negatively impact these house prices, then a lot of the times, and I haven't got all the way through this one, but I did save that they would actually make the solar company set up an escrow. So then if these people went to sell, you already have the assessment done. And so then if it, let's just say it was a 5% loss for them, that they would actually have to pay them if they sold, not if they didn't, but if they sold.
Interesting.
So,
I know that we've talked to tower people about property values.
Yeah.
And basically, they're so sure of what they decide, but I think it's a very subjective thing. I don't think it's really, you have to realize who's doing it and how they're doing it and all that. It's just,
Well, I think it's an issue worth exploring.
right.
Yeah.
I would agree. An archaeology reconnaissance survey. I knew I'd mess that one up. Basically, to make sure there's no very important burial grounds or anything like that.
Yeah, you think that'd be a state law already?
I don't think it is.
Really?
Not that I've read through. I do know there's several other places that do require it. Harvey County was one of them, I think, if I remember right. Spitting from my mouth there on that one. Like transportation routes would have to be listed. I don't know if we have that on site plan. So like,
I think we
it's
do.
not just the ingress and egress, but like if they have like a main thoroughfare that they're going to use through the county, that the county themselves would know about it.
Yeah, Darren, I think the county already mandates that we could pick like a certain route that they take to get back to the highway.
That's part of the, road use agreement.
I've just kind of saved notes, so I'm not real prepared on this. On one of them, there was penalty provisions that basically listed that if they were failing to comply, there were violations and fees that would be occurred on that. So that way, if they are in violation, you have more than just pulling their cup or their bond. And then they would like keep reoccurring until they would fix them, or then you would pull that. So, because I think having some middle ground there is important because I think it's pretty extreme if, you know, all their trees are dead around it and we just say, well, we're gonna pull your bond because you won't, you know, sustain your 80%. So that way there's some middle ground because you're not one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
I do have one that came out on, I'll get it to Darren. And then, outdoor storage. So I think having requirements of that on any kind of equipment or broken equipment, all that, I think we need some kind of regulation on that because we don't want them to have broken equipment that's just stockpiled out there, with the potential that we have learned that they can leach if they've been damaged and sitting in the rain. So I think we need to have something in there about that. I don't know the exact wording on it, but I have read a few. They weren't really detailed. It just kind of said like outdoor storage of equipment and materials associated with the solar facility shall not be allowed. I don't think that's really correct because they're going to have to be able to store something at some point, but there should be stipulations to the storage, whether it's in a controlled area to where the runoff's controlled or covered area, or it can only be stored for so long. I think some provisions there. Another thing I'd like to see in our regulations, and I don't know how to warp it in, is that a house wouldn't be surrounded on all four sides. At least to give them at least one side not surrounded. So I don't know how to write that. But I would just think for the residents, we would want at least them to be able to look one way and not be surrounded. That's kind of what all I have right off the top of my head.
Okay, all right. We're gonna make another round too, so.
So I don't,
Shirley?
I don't know what we have. What do we have about ground cover? I mean, I'm really thinking, I would like to see them not using herbicides unless they absolutely had to.
Not to use what?
Herbicides.
We talked about it a little bit before. I think maybe you weren't here yet.
Okay.
But David and I were working with the county guy over here, and I've got some things written up, and I think David does too. We're gonna work, us two are gonna work on that.
Okay.
But no herbicides, I need to get that in the mix.
Yeah, I think, let's go through that. But what I'm thinking on that, Rich, is each project has to have a soil conservation plan approved by the County Soil Conservation Agency.
Absolutely. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And individual plan to meet the individual needs.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
I think somewhere we need to put an emphasis on native plants and trying not to introduce invasive.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Part of the issue is,
One of the things that tripped me when it was one of the first meetings is somebody suggested we plant fescue. We don't want to do that unless it's absolutely necessary.
Takes over.
So the conservation agency is well aware of that.
Right.
And more sensitive than anyone.
one of the things they talked about when you and I met with this guy over here was those native plants don't seed really well to begin with. So you've got to put something in there for a year or so to hold the ground until the native stuff starts growing and taking over. And then you got to get rid of whatever you planted there to do the transition.
Yeah, I've seen them do that with wheat. You know, because
Yeah,
the
wheat's a good one.
it was only there for a year, it holds it well, and then it's gone.
Everybody thought fescue was a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's just so thick that animals can't stay in it. It just doesn't work
As,
well.
as far as I know, most native plants, or native plants, tend to fold over and create a tunnel, what it's actually called, for animals to
Right.
get through, and it tends to give more coverage and more habitat.
Yeah.
That's one thing I thought was.
Anybody in this room who's done CRP ground knows how that all works. And, you know, the longer you keep that in CRP, the better it gets. So, all right, where are we at? Are you?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, Charlene. Anything else, Charlene?
No, right now.
Okay.
What are we talking?
We're going around the room trying to identify things we still want to address in our final draft. So we'll finish and then we'll come back to you. Yeah. Morgan,
What, where are we now on our maximum setbacks? What, some of my notes are a little off.
I don't think we have a maximum setback. We have a minimum of 500 feet from the nearest property line and 1,000 feet from the nearest residence.
I'd kind of like to see that be 1,000 feet myself.
All around.
I'd like to increase that setback. And I'd also like to add that we redo where we can have that 5 mile buffer between federal and state reserves, wildlife reserve. I'm in favor of that.
You know, I'm all for doing this as best we can to take into account the concern the neighbors have. But at some point, we may get them so restrictive, they can't build. And I don't want that either. So we've got to find a happy medium in there where it works for all parties. And
Yeah, I would actually like to have the wildlife people come and talk about that here to us. What they
It's
think.
gonna be very tough to get them to do that.
I'd ask them to come.
Huh?
I'd ask them to come before.
They don't like going out on a limb and being on anything because they can be held accountable and fired for those type of things. I just went and talked to them, so I'm just being honest, and it is very hard to get much of any type of opinion out. Off the record, you'll get an opinion, but otherwise, they're told from their higher commands that you need to pass that up the tree and up the tree. And right now, there's not enough studies that they want to get like a true opinion on.
Yeah.
So.
What's the premise or the rationale behind the 5 mile suggestion that you have?
Well, one of the reasons I want to make sure that our natural preserve, what they've worked so hard to put together for so many years, that this isn't jeopardized in any way. Linn County is known nationwide for its wildlife and its duck hunting and goose hunting. I've run into guys in Casey's this winter. I said, how you doing, you know? And where are you from? Well, we're from Alabama. What are you doing? Well, we're duck hunting. And the place was full of duck hunters. And I thought, well, that's all right. So, but that's one consideration. We have geese fly over our farm all the time. We're in that same flyway. We're just south of you a little farther. And, so I don't want to see anything disturb that. That's just the position I am.
that's interesting because people come from all over the United States to hunt deer too, in Kansas.
They do.
Kansas is known for their trophy deers, so.
Yes, they do.
Need more hunters.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love them, you know.
not less pickups, right, Eddie? More hunters.
I don't know that those people don't have a license to kill.
Out of the public, I don't know if you were able to watch it yet, but who was it that talked? The Audubon talk. And they did say that, like, with ducks anyways, the area around that, they'll travel like 4.3 miles for feeding. So they're worried that if it was a lot around there, that you would be cutting off food supply for them to be using that area. So
What do ducks typically feed on?
Milo, beans, corn,
Agricultural.
Grass.
I mean, grass, a bit of everything.
Corn,
Algae.
beans.
The same with the geese. I mean,
Pretty
but
much
that-
anything that's
she
green, they
actually
can get
talked
down
straight
there.
to me.
Frogs, they'll eat frogs.
During that real cold spell in January, we had a bunch of geese on the Cherry Valley Lake. I mean, probably thousands of them. And in shifts almost, they would fly away. And if you drove out to the edge of the area, there's a big milo field out there. And they were all out there in the milo fields.
I've seen geese feeding in corn stubble, milo
Yep.
stalks, et cetera. I've not personally witnessed ducks doing the same, so that's why I asked.
Oh,
about them in
They're just
particular.
sneakier out there. They're hard to see. When you hunt them, when you field hunt them and they come in, it is hard to see them because a lot of times they'll come in real low for a long ways, and so they'll be like 3 foot off the ground. You can't see them. Yeah, it's wild.
Morgan, what else?
That's all I have.
All right, let's go back around one more time, just check it. Anything else, Darren? All right. I just had to tell
Just-
his name.
Call me Emily.
Paul. I told Elizabeth I was going to start calling her Mrs. Staten or Miss Staten, so I wouldn't screw it up.
No.
Elizabeth,
I think I'm good.
okay,
Good.
are you good? All right. You
I'll
good?
touch on a couple things. I love the 5 mile setback. The other thing is with the 1,000-foot setback, I did pull off, I don't know the acreage with me right now, but basically a perfect square. And if you did a 1,000-foot setback, you are limiting them a little bit beyond the 50% cap of prime farmland. I think it was, and I do have it in notes, I just don't have it where it's handy enough. I don't know if it was like 800 or 900 foot on a setback if there was a road all 4 sides. That is your 50%. So to me, I think a setback like that is neat because say on Clearway's project that's proposed over there, they have their panels as of now getting really close to the roadway, but then they're gonna use their other 50% on the very end of the project. Sort of, I feel like if we're gonna have the 50% requirement, we could use a setback that would then use that other 50% as a bigger buffer to protect our citizens, our county, to keep it more rural.
So I hope I'm doing a favor to Darren on this. So all those regulations that you really like and you see somewhere else, copy those and send them to Darren. And we'll all get a chance to look at them and read them together. And yeah, I think the more we find good stuff elsewhere and incorporate in what we're doing, the better off we're gonna be.
Right.
So something like that, is there any of 1,000-foot setback about that? If like somebody wants to put in like an 8-acre one like Heartland, but they only have 10 acres, the 1,000-foot thing is just gonna not allow them to do that.
If we were to do it the 1,000 foot, I would like a tiered system again,
Uh-huh.
because you can't do anything with
Right.
1,000 feet on 40 acres or any.
And I mean, we're talking about that we'd like to have smaller farms. And so if you do smaller farms, how are you gonna do that if you have that big a setback?
Do you think that the 1,000 foot setback would start at 120, or kind of like we had before, maybe?
I don't know. I think something else that I've read a lot about is people doing the solar gardens, which would be more, so there's one style that's more like just for homeowners, but then there's like the commercial side for like what Heartland's doing. And I think I'd like to see, if we do a tiered system, do more your shared residential than your small scale,
Or community solar, I've seen.
yeah, like your community solar, then do your solar gardens, which are actually, like what Heartland would propose, and then do these larger farms, because they are completely different things. And to try to regulate them in one set is really rough.
I agree.
Because, I mean, something to this magnitude, like what Clearway's project is, they're never gonna use a 40-acre parcel for it. So like, I think to have the same regulations for what a 40-acre would be completely different. I would like to see if we're gonna do different regulations, just broke out to say, this is what this is what this is, and then this is what this is. So you're regulating each one a little bit different, but they have the general regulations to go off of, and then, like your setbacks would be different. There'd be a few things that you could live differently. And there's a lot of other counties that do that.
I'm a numbers junkie, and I'm sitting here playing with what a 500-foot, 1,000-foot setback means in real terms if I own property, and you're getting ready to tell me what I can't do on this farm that I own that I want to put solar on. Hypothetical situation. A 500-foot setback on a half-mile-long property line, which is a pretty common distance, results in 30.3 acres that are not accessible. If we extend that out to 1,000, I've lost 60.6 acres. So 2640 in distance times 1,000 feet divided by 43,560, which is square feet an acre.
But that would be considered, I mean, if you're doing the 50% of the
It had to
land.
be prime farmland.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're making an assumption that it is prime farmland.
Well, where all the projects are, that's what it is.
We shouldn't be discussing regulations about potential projects. We should be getting regulations right, and then they should be applied to any given project, because we base all of our regulations on 2 proposed projects that may or may not come to fruition. We've been short-sighted and not thinking long-term about all the other projects that may come after them.
Well, one of the things that we did during the site tour was we from the road showed 500 feet and 1,000 feet. And to me, it was pretty impactful.
Also,
With
that
no
would have to be-
vegetative screening established when we were looking at that distance.
Correct,
Which
but
we
we couldn't get on we had to do Mark's property because we didn't have permission to get on the other people's properties.
So I do think it should be in tiers.
One thing about the setbacks though is, and this is getting a little deeper than planning and zoning probably, but for it to be inside the conditional use permit, they're probably getting paid the lease on it. So it would be in their boundaries. So to a certain extent, you're not. So
Mark, what would you consider solar garden? How big?
I don't know. I don't have that right on me. I wasn't really ready to go through all of this tonight, but it's just something I've read about.
It's an intriguing
concept.
But I think typically isn't that for people that
I think
live
it's 15
close to one another?
A lot of, well, so the community garden's one, but then the solar garden is what they were considering like the commercial size. I wanted to say around 20 or 15 or 20 acres and under is what they were talking about. So, and then the community ones are usually pretty small. It's just like 3 or 4 houses sharing,
And even
5 to 10 acres.
Clearway already does community solar. I think they're about 40 acres. There's quite a few in Illinois that you can see how it might look out here. That's probably the closest.
What terminology do they use to describe this?
I think it's community solar, and it's
It's like 40 acres.
40 to 60-ish, the ones I found. On their website, they have a map, and so you can exclude certain things and figure out.
Elizabeth, do any of these farms go on the grid, or are they all, is the power consumed locally?
For the community ones, it's set back into for local. And so I think they say, I'm not entirely sure, and I'm sure if they were here, they would correct me, but it covers a couple hundred homes for their small plot.
So the idea behind that, you don't need to tie into a big transmission line, and you can use more of the power poles that you'd see just jogging a typical county.
I think that was the idea. I have no electric background whatsoever. Yeah.
I'm just curious, some of these solar facilities, is to how much that they actually are able to produce in a certain period of time, or to cover enough of their home and whatever they're trying to do. And I'm just a little concerned as to whether it's going to be put on the grid or if it's going to stay local. If it stays local for local consumption, I have no problem. To me, that would put people like Heartland, they would be exempt. Because it's all being consumed within Heartland's system. And they're cooperative. So, they're owned by the people, the county for the most part. So that's kind of what I would look at more myself. I'd rather see something that's more consumable on a local basis than I would be on the mass. But that's getting a little bit away from what we were talking about. I'm sorry, but
So Jeff was talking about how we can't work on the regulations based on these two projects, that we have to remove them, but you're saying we can't do it with the wildlife because this is where the projects, if we did say do the 5-mile radius for the wildlife, everybody's like, we can't do that because their projects are proposed there. So I'm just trying to figure out which way we're looking at this as we're putting these ideas out there.
Yeah, I don't know how practical my thinking is on this. It's very, it's very subjective. I just think that if we want to ever have solar farms here, we've got to have regulations that just don't outlaw them just because of the regulations we have. I mean, it just prohibits anybody from ever building one.
Well, but what they want to do is they want it easy. They want to do it right there at the power plant. And they could if they wanted to. The other counties don't have power plants and they put the commercial solar in there. So it's not doable. It would just make them have to think a little harder.
Hence the Bourbon County project not being located near a
Right.
power plant. It's massive in size. So that's my opinion on how we should look at things. I feel like I can abstractly look and say there's not a proposed solar project in the county and clearly judge in my own estimation whether or not any solar project should be located near any wildlife refuge. So it just happens that we have a wildlife refuge in the corner of our county where they're proposed right now. So it's either right or wrong to be near them. And if it's wrong, what is the acceptable distance from that? And does it have to be universal in Linn County as compared to out by Great Bend or anywhere else? Not necessarily, but yeah, for sure. And so I asked the question about why 5 miles, not to take you to task on that, but again, I like numbers, I like rationale, rather than just throwing an arbitrary dart on the wall and saying 5%.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
know you don't intend it that way.
Everything's based on what we were told before, the
Right.
4.6 mile feeding.
4.3.
Or 4.3 mile feed, that's what I've been
Yeah.
told. 5 miles is a good buffer. You'll make 4.3, hell, make it 5,
Yeah, sure.
you know? That's what I'm judging it on.
Well, one of the things, and it's on the newt paperwork, correct? The endangered species, the newt. Their recommendation was 5 miles because of the endangered species down where the project's going. So if you put, and that may be a daring question, but if you guys say, I want 1 mile, or I want 3 miles, and it's in the regulations, and then the wildlife comes back and says, our recommendation is 5. Does it matter because it's already in the regulations? Does it supersede it because they're experts? How does that work?
Well, what we're hearing earlier, the experts aren't going to tell us what they really
Well,
want.
but they have written documents on it based, I mean, we've brought them in. I don't have my new documents. I have my wildlife letter that they recommended a lot of different things, but there's another document for recommending a 5 mile radius.
They're not willing to come in and speak to us. They're not able to do that.
But we have letters that they've done. So then my question is if we only want 1 mile and they come back and say, we recommend this, can it be addressed at that time?
So I think that would be a decision that would come before planning and zoning, because it would just be a recommendation from Wildlife and Parks. It wouldn't be a statute
Right.
or a rule or regulation. The state saying that it had to be that. So I think it would be something that planning and zoning would have to take into consideration as a recommendation from them and then make a determination.
I have an unpopular opinion about this. I see the wildlife refuge as a red herring tied to the solar issue. I mean, it's meant to divert or to take attention away from the matter at hand. We're at a state that has been given some very specific federal recommendations and limitations put in place on agriculturals because of the greater or lesser prairie chicken. And our state's fighting back saying, don't come in here and tell us what to do, and use the prairie chicken to dictate what our agricultural practices are. I see the exact opposite happening here right now because we have a contingency of individuals that will do anything and everything to find an excuse not to construct this in the proposed location. So again, I see it as a red herring.
I completely disagree. I think that
100%.
you're dismissing the income that does produce to the county.
Can you quantify it?
I can't give you a number.
And
because
can you compare and contrast it based on what solar would do? And is there possible for the two to coexist?
We don't know what solar's gonna do we?
That's the thing, is it's not studied enough. I'm not gonna try to be a jerk about it, but it does bring a lot of income into Florida County, and I think
I think we
To
need
put
to
it-
have that shown to us though, because where do they stay and where do they eat?
they will.
I mean,
They eat on the crop field and they stay on the water.
no, where do the people who come here to hunt
Well,
stay and
some
where
do
do
have
they eat?
lodges around here, and
They have clubs.
there's a lot of duck clubs in the area. There is.
So it's the taxes we get off of those.
There'd be taxes there. There'd be, going to Stainbrooks and buying. And some of those guys are very good about spending their money here. I know several people that pump water for their duck clubs. They plant for their duck clubs. That they do their own dirt work for the duck clubs. That are residents here in the county that would potentially lose out on thousands and thousands of dollars every year to not have that.
My wife and I had a feed store in Pleasant for 10 years. Every deer season, we would have people come in from all over the country and they would come in and buy corn, sacks and sacks and tons of corn to put out. And it was amazing, how much revenue is produced around, kind of an old story, in the feed business. A fellow come in, he said, how much is that deer corn? I said, well, it's $10. Well, how much is that regular corn? Well, it's $9. What's the difference? $1. Kind of how that works.
You can't quote me on all this because I don't have all the numbers written in front of me. I just talked to Jacob not long ago. He was telling me not far from the refuge, there was a hunting duck club that had a pretty nice building on it, and it was small in acreage. Alec, you remember if it was, did you see 40, 50, 60 acres? It was very small. but it sold for over $1 million. It's because of the location and the habitat that we have. So to try to put all of a number on all of what it brings in is very tough. They do fly in. I do know that. They do drive in. They do stay in cabins locally. Right there by Wicked Pro Shop, they're right behind it. There's those cabins. And there's some down here in Pleasant. I don't really know where they're at around city that I've heard people talk about also.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Hunting brings a lot of money into this county. I mean, it really does. And it's goose, duck, deer. Okay, we've been at this an hour, and the commission has another set of stuff we need about an hour for. So let's try to put a wrap on this. I think it's probably too early to meet next Wednesday. We got a lot of stuff to do, and Darren's got some stuff to do. How much further out do you want to go until we have another meeting? And it's 2 weeks too short? Is it too long? What's the,
2 weeks would be the 20th.
pardon?
2 weeks would be the 20th.
Yeah,
I have a conference. I will be out of town the week of the 26th through the 29th. Actually, the 25th through the 28th.
you know, that would force us at the earliest, given any time, I'll be back on the 20th. Maybe we just go back to the week after Darren's got his stuff and do the next meeting on the 3rd.
I think we could have a lot of what we want done then, and that way we could send it. If I don't know if everybody thinks this, send anything to Darren so there's like a red line, and we could just walk through the regulations of the red lines that were sent in and have a really good consensus by then.
By the 3rd.
Is there any way that you can get it sent to me the week of, I know that's only a week and a half, the week of the 18th, so I've got time to work on it, because the week of the 25th, I won't have any time to work on it, because we've got a class.
Everything I'll send you will already be in a red line like yours.
Okay.
I mean, I can send it in a clean format like that.
Okay.
That way you don't even have to. It gives me a little bit more time, and I've already, to do it, it's just as easy for me to copy and paste it and redline it. If that's all right with you.
If you're willing to do it.
Okay.
Like, go
I've already
for it.
started on it. I mean, it won't have everybody else's, but mine would be, or I guess ours could be that way.
So we all will need it like, what, a week ahead from both of you, right, at least, because I mean, you know, if I had got something today or even yesterday, I wouldn't have had time to read it, so.
Right.
So April 3rd, that's a Wednesday, first Wednesday in April, meet at 6:30. We okay with that? And let's not get ahead of ourselves. We'll decide on the 3rd when we're ready to meet again, so.
That's fine. And then can I get the current red line just so I'm not
Yeah, I'll
backtracking?
send it to you
Okay.
either later tonight or.
That's
Did you
fine.
send it to all of us?
Yeah.
Send it. But I'll send it again.
You know, I'm just looking at this. This is not going to work very well for me. The last two, first of the month Wednesdays, I'm supposed to be in a church council meeting just across the street. And I've been telling them, this is the last time you're going to have to do this. So, and I just told them, I said, this is the last time you have to do this. But here we are again on the 3rd. And I don't mind Paul doing the meeting if I can't make it, but that first Wednesday of the month is going to be a problem for me ongoing. So we'll leave it on the 3rd. And if Paul has to do it,
We
Paul, you just have to do
we
it.
promise not to be too hard on it.
It will be okay. Okay, let's adjourn this part of the meeting and we'll, Paul and I'll switch caps or hats and you'll be the chair. And so I will call our meeting ended here at 7:30. Thank you all. We're making progress.
You want to run over the bylaws and whatnot?
Right. As you can see in the bylaws, number 1 says that we are supposed to have an annual review of the comprehensive plan. And somewhere I thought it said it's supposed to be the first meeting of the year. But we need to, we need to review the comprehensive plan. In, the comprehensive plan is only revised every so often, but it can be amended or revised. We just need to see if there's something that needs to be done. And we have new people that we need to make sure that there's a clear understanding of what's in there and see if there's any questions. And same for the bylaws. I have 2 or 3 changes to the bylaws that I'd like to propose. I know there's some others that had some changes that they wanted to propose to the bylaws. And I also, Darren has a speech for us.
I don't have to speak.
You don't have a speech? I wanted to take a look at section 1 of the first regulations, simply because it was an intentional summary of the comprehensive plan. So we should revisit that along with revisiting the comprehensive plan. And it's a good summary. I mean, it's just nice and concise. And as far as just the rest of any agenda, I've had several conversations with Darren about helping us educate ourselves and understand what role planning and zoning has in any financial decisions. And the TLDR is none. So I'm going to let Darren take the mic when we get to that point, but anyway, that's the agenda. I don't want to keep us long. I know we've been cramming in stuff. And also, by way of reminder, we have a regular meeting next week. We had a commitment to Darren to get any conditions for the proposed quarry to him. Now it's ASAP time. So, because that it got tabled, that's just freebie reminder, no extra charge. I don't care where we begin. It seems like the bylaws would be the most straightforward place to start. Has everybody had a chance to read through them in the last few weeks? And does anybody have any proposed change? Oh, and
I've got
this
like
is-
3 or 4.
Okay, and this is a workshop, no votes, we're not deciding anything. If we have actual changes, we will take those and.
So if you just go through each one, just because they're pretty short, right? The bylaws, just say the first one and then what your changes are.
Sure. I can read them out loud. Yes, my kids, I like to read out loud. Article 1, areas of responsibility. Following adoption of a comprehensive plan in accordance with Kansas statutes, it shall be the responsibility of the Planning Commission to perform an annual review of the comprehensive plan. Said review of any recommended amendments, extensions, or additions shall be reported to the Board of County Commissioners as required per KSA 12-747D. Number 2, it shall be the responsibility of the Planning Commission to hold public hearings on all applications for amendments to the zoning map, conditional use permits, and subdivisions, and make recommendation to the governing body. Number 3, it shall be the responsibility of the Planning Commission to review their bylaws on an annual basis and adopt changes in the bylaws by an affirmative vote of the majority of the full Planning Commission membership. And I asked Darren to clarify what full was. Does full mean all 9 of us have to be here? Why did they say full and not a quorum? And after asking Gary, it just means a quorum. It doesn't mean that it's a supermajority or some other fancy thing that I don't even understand. So out of those 3, does anyone have any questions? What do they mean, or proposed changes?
I think those 3 are good as they stand. I really do.
All right. Anyone else? Article 2, membership. Number 1, the number of members shall be 9, with each county commission district having 3 members. Number 2, term of office will be 3 years. Number 3, any member absent 3 consecutive unexcused regular planning commission meetings may be recommended to the Board of County Commissioners for replacement.
So I got 2 suggestions on this one. To extend the number 2, terms of office will be 3 years, and one can only serve 2 terms consecutively. I mean, that's already been imposed on us by the county commissioner.
Right, I'm
So
surprised
it
it's
just
not in
codifies it
here.
here. Yeah. So that was pretty straightforward. Number 3, any member absent 3 consecutive unexcused regular planning commission meetings may be recommended by the Board of County Commissioners for replacement. Now, that's all good and okay, but who makes the decision whether they're excused or unexcused?
Right.
So I'm saying by the action of the chairperson or the county planning and zoning director, they make that call. I don't care which one it is. One of those 2 people should be making that call.
Yeah, I think the chairperson.
Does that mean you have to contact the chairperson and tell them or?
Well, generally what happens now is, because it's not written in here, Darren gets the call, and he and I talked, in the past, he and I have talked about that. You know, I don't want to make another burden on Darren. It's just, we dump a lot of stuff on him already. Let's just make the chair make that call.
Although for that person to just make that decision, whether it's a good excuse or a bad excuse, that's really ambiguous.
It is, but you know,
I mean,
somebody's gotta
could
do it.
could go along with favoritism and.
I think if they call you at all, that's one step in the right direction. I mean, a no-show is definitely not excused.
Yes, just a no-show. I mean, what else would it be?
Right, so some of that's gonna hinge upon the whatever policy is written about the Zoom meetings.
Yeah, I have that here too. What does that mean as far as virtual attendance? Which is still very fuzzy.
And the commissioners talked about that in that meeting where they discussed it. And Gary was supposed to have it drafted, and
There
we're,
you go.
No, Gary.
Well, that's not going to happen.
Not this week.
Well, so I'm still adamant. I think the chairperson ought to be the one that excuses it or unexcuses it.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
As far as who's the contact person?
And so what would the person who you say you're not excused, what would they have to, is there a grievance procedure or? I mean, really? I mean,
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
I think somebody's got to have a conversation with them, and I mean, in the end, it's the appointing commissioner's responsibility to keep that slot filled. At what point to bring in the appointing commissioner is a good question.
But actually, at what point, are 6 excused absences a year? I mean, that doesn't really help the planning board in any way.
That's 50% of regular meetings, apart from whatever you want to call this.
I mean, that, maybe that should just be 6 absences in a year, because that's a lot of regular meetings.
We're working with the number 6, I think it's
No, it says 3.
3.
But that's,
3 consecutive.
now those are excused, but let's just say a person, because the chair decides, well, that's an excused absence, but if you're gone 6 times, that really affects the planning board and what you do. That's like going to a class that's a 5-day-a-week class and you only go 2 or 3 days a week.
I think given the fact that we have the capacity to attend virtually,
But we don't yet.
and hypothetically, that I would almost want to strike the word unexcused. If you can't make the meeting some number of times, like you're saying, that detrimentally affects your ability to participate, maybe this isn't the best place for you to volunteer.
That's right.
And because we have the technology for them to participate, now if,
I think
Dave's out of the country, he made a Herculean effort at 2 o'clock in the stinking morning to attend.
I don't want to do that again.
Yeah, there's a certain age at which
You
all
mean you're not
my,
going to Italy again?
I tried it 2 different ways. I stayed up until 1:30 and got killed myself. Next time I thought, I'll go to sleep and just wake up. And that was
I'll
work.
be out there groggy.
So Paul, you're saying just take out the excuse and just leave it, a member absent 3 consecutive times. Well,
I think if we have a clear policy about virtual attendance and you're unable to do either, excused or unexcused, then your contribution to the committee is,
So let's go to virtual attendance and tell me how, what are you gonna do when you come here and nobody else is here?
Well, my suggestion of virtual attendance would be, it has to be approved by the chair. And so the chair's hopefully not gonna approve 9 people to be, there comes to a point where the chair is gonna say, this isn't gonna.
But you can't say to one person, yeah, you can't, you can't, to the other person, you can, if they both have the same good reason.
Yeah, you can.
Well, then that's,
I think we vest that authority into the chairperson.
or we could say there must be a quorum physical. Not to make it, not to split hairs, but that would at least give you a rule of thumb. If we said there must be a physical quorum. If the remainder of that would only be 2 virtual attendance, wouldn't it be? If we had
You got 7.
I don't
want to overthink
I'm
it.
just suggesting that I agree with you, Paul, because what if you're in the middle of a meeting and you've got 4 people sitting here and the internet goes down?
Yeah. So we have
I
9 regular members.
I
so
think you might be onto something.
And I mean, that would,
That answers Charlene's concern that everybody.
and that would be the same reason we would call the meeting anyway. If there's no quorum, we call the meeting.
right.
So if 3+ people can only attend virtually, then the meeting's called. Unless, I don't know, we got some emergency thing to do and it's a blizzard, we could pull it off, I suppose, but I would say that's a
So there must be a
feat of
quorum.
man's judgment.
Yeah, you're hitting on something there too, Paul. I mean, there could be a case where you want to override that, or we do have an emergency.
like a car
You may want to have everybody on Zoom just to get something done.
Right.
Yeah, which I would just cross that bridge when we get there. I mean, to quote Pirates of the Caribbean, these are guidelines.
I kind of wish we should put something in.
When's the last time Pirates of the Caribbean was quoted in a planning and zoning meeting?
I think we should put something in there saying that the chairman reserves the right to make an absence excused, even though they didn't call in, like if you had a car accident, hit a deer, any number of things that can't be foreseen. Because then you tried your best, but you couldn't.
Right.
I don't think that should be counted against you.
Especially if you make a phone call. I can't make it. If you, like say, if you have a wreck or something, yeah, you can't help those things. Those are
Yeah, you had a wreck.
Okay.
extenuating circumstances.
Zoning board's not your highest priority if you're in a car accident.
So let's just review, because in regard to number 3, we talked about a few things. We're still talking about 3 absences. Are we leaving the word consecutive?
Regular planning commission meetings happen once a month, so there's only 12 of them.
Right. So do we want to strike consecutive and unexcused, given the fact that we are going to have the capacity to attend virtually?
I could agree to that.
All right, so we have number 3, any member absent 3 regular planning commission meetings may be recommended to the Board of Commissioners for replacement. At the, how do I word what you said? At the
what's the fancy word?
At the
I'm trying to think.
Discretion?
discretion, that's it.
Yeah.
At the discretion of the chair.
Yeah.
Does that sum it up? And number 4 is going to have to be a virtual policy.
There you go.
So we have any member absent, 3 regular planning commission meetings may be recommended to the Board of County Commissioners for replacement at the discretion of the chair.
I like it.
And number 4, virtual attendance, would say, firstly, something about there must be a quorum of members in physical attendance.
It must be a physical quorum.
Um, Unless extenuating circumstances prevent. That would give us the emergency.
Right. So if there was a storm, everybody could stay home and have a meeting.
Right.
So just because you have this here, just think about this. I'm just throwing this out there. Wonder if your people who are applying for a conditional use permit want to come by Zoom.
You know, I'd rather have them in person here for the simple reason of questioning and stuff like that.
But maybe they'd rather have us here in person. So,
You know, it just, I mean, if you're coming here to ask for,
but that's what I think. But it's like, so,
you need to be present to answer any questions we have.
right?
But Charlene's point is a good one. Why is that good for the goose and not the gander?
'Cause
Well, I mean, that's not what you said it.
we're gonna get five,
It's a double standard.
we're gonna get 5 out of 9 here, one way or another.
They're just the one first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think if they're vested in their project, it's just, it's some skin in the game. And it's too easy to hide behind the rest of the gallery. From the rest of the gallery, if you can just be on a Zoom meeting.
Right.
You know, if you're here and you have something that other people are not happy with, then put a name and a face
Right.
on the plan. And not just,
I'm just saying, be prepared for that.
so I think I think the virtual attendance is plan B for us to keep our people informed. That's the primary reason for it. It's not plan A. So for 4, I had something along the lines of virtual attendance is allowed as per county policy, and that's only because we don't have that fleshed out yet. But that will be fleshed out apart from us, is my presumption. And a physical quorum must be in attendance for the meeting to be whatever you would call it, to be
Convened.
convened.
And so
I like
also, go ahead. Well, did they say it could be it could be phone and Zoom? You could have people coming in on phone and Zoom. Is that correct? I thought they said different level of platforms.
I thought it was just Zoom. It may have been just Zoom,
Then phone.
only for a vote.
Oh,
You've got to be visible to vote.
But I think Chris said he did want to set up different platforms so that the phone would connect with the Zoom in any way. And so it should just be Zoom if you're doing it, not both.
right. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing preventing us from amending this next month also, as soon as they get whatever's going to happen there. But I think for now, we'll do what we can. I mean, Dave called in, but needing to be able to see, we need a positive identification for them to vote. As far as what little bit of the law I might pretend to understand. So is there anything else that needed to be in 2 paragraph 4 regarding virtual meetings, virtual attendance? I only have the 2 sentences.
I get you.
Okay. Article 3, officers. Election of officers shall be held annually at the regular meeting in the month of January, unless it's really cold. I threw that last part in.
The last 2 years it's been done in February, but I think we just leave it in January. We know that if we can't get it done in January, it has to be done in February.
Right. Number 2, the planning commission shall elect a chairperson and a vice chairperson from among the appointed members. 3, a secretary shall be selected for an indefinite term. It is not required that he or she be a member of the commission. We'll come back to secretary. The term of office shall be 1 year. The chairperson shall be limited to 2 consecutive terms. Vice chairperson and secretary may succeed themselves indefinitely. We have been without a secretary for a long time. And it's left Darren in a lurch as secretary pro tem. Is that the Latin? Man, I'm gonna pull out every little,
You gotta go. Yeah.
I gotta bolster my resume, fool these people into thinking I might know what I'm doing for at least a year. No, we've had substitute secretary Darren in for a long time. It's just not fair. So if anyone knows somebody who would be interested, we would.
I mean, it's a job that really you should be paid for.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because
It's not a
basically the
small
people
amount
that
of
have done it before have all been people who were employees who took their time off during the day and they came here at night, so.
Well, Daniel was talking to us in an earlier meeting that there's the technology out there that if you got it recorded, it will turn it into text.
Yeah, I think we can take care of the minutes.
Yeah.
One way or the other, without having a transcriptionist
Right.
I
involved.
think we
But-
have to let someone look over
Well,
whatever it pops out.
when we
Because
get to the
sometimes it gets a
responsibility,
little janky.
oh yeah, oh yeah, it needs to be.
Like Mr.
Ed.
Kopp's name on the caption thing when it was on the YouTube, his name was spelled different every time.
Yeah.
It was either a cow or a. So
But when we get to the secretary's responsibilities, the next page, I want to make some changes there too. So it's not a small job. Anyway, so in general, are there any changes to these officers 1 through 4?
I like them as is.
Article 4, duties of officers. Chairperson, the chairperson shall preside at all meetings and public hearings of the planning commission and shall A, serve as a spokesperson for the planning commission. B, decide all points of order and procedure. C, certify plans and subdivision plats. D, participate and vote on all matters. E, call special meetings as hereinafter provided. I think that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I'm all okay with that too.
Vice chairperson, the vice chairperson shall assume the duties of the chairperson in his or her absence and say the pledge of allegiance.
Give me at least 1 month to do that.
Yeah, basically fill in for the chairperson is the vice chairperson's responsibilities. Secretary, the secretary shall be responsible for keeping the minutes of the commission meetings. B, sending agendas to members of the commission. C, carrying out written correspondence. D, maintaining the records of the commission. E, certifying along with the chairperson all plans and subdivision plats. F, performing other duties as the commission may require. And G, causing all public notice of hearing as required by law to be given. One thing I'd definitely like to add is that social media, official county social media be included in their list of duties.
So I would leave those in there. I'm not saying that the secretary would do those, because as I'm preparing that stuff, now that we have the SharePoint, I can just put it in there. There's no sense in sending it to somebody else and having them send it.
Right.
So a lot of this has been taken care of with the SharePoint.
So what in that list would help you have someone else do, even maybe if they're not the official secretary,
Okay?
keeping the minutes? I can work on the minutes. Like as far as technology,
So
there are multiple apps that will parse the meeting for you.
So
We need
something that
this- We
has,
need another person, like Elizabeth said, to.
so
edit.
something that has helped is these being video.
Right.
That's helped tremendously.
Right.
Because when we're in a meeting and I've got stuff to present, it's hard to keep the minutes as I present it.
Oh, yeah.
But when I'm just sitting and listening, I take notes. But the videos helped with that tremendously.
Well, I mean, YouTube has automatic transcript. I don't know if you know what's in there, but it can be janky, but it's in there. Zoom has features for that. If we always have Zoom going, whether or not anybody's dialed in, there are features of Zoom that could do that. And there are other paid third-party applications that will post-process a meeting and analyze speakers, assign them speaker 1, 2, 3, 4, and do that also for you. So I think we can cover that. I don't know what the legal coverage needs to be.
I know.
I don't know if the county's particularly attached to Zoom, but I know Teams has a really good.
Teams will outline it for you and do all kinds of stuff for you.
They won't use Teams.
Yeah, Chris rejected Teams.
Like security or something.
That's what they use for the IRS.
Yeah.
Teams.
I think it's, they're not, because they're not running a VPN.
That's just what Chris said, right?
Okay.
That was my guess. But there are things like that will do it, like Teams.
So these microphones will go into Zoom, is that right?
So the way, and I don't understand it all, but the way Chris is setting all that up, it's tied into the YouTube. And that's all I'm gonna say because I don't understand it. I can't elaborate on it, but the video and the audio will be recorded.
Because sometimes I attend my TRICO meeting by Zoom. Okay. And they put the little microphone out in the middle of the room. And it's really hard to hear what everybody has to say. So,
You know, when I spoke to Chris about it, the way I understood it, it was not a problem getting it on these microphones.
Right.
okay.
Same platform.
So the person on Zoom can hear each
Right.
person.
And
Okay.
if I say any more than that, I'm way out of my head. Way out.
So I'll follow up with that. And at a minimum, Darren is surviving. I think we can do better.
I'm okay, but a secretary.
That's the main thing. If you could offload one thing, it would be A.
Absolutely, because the rest of them aren't time consuming, so to speak.
Okay. And just one other geek out thing, and this was pretty cool. I did this with our minutes, but Google just has this other new thing that they're playing with called Notebook LM. And like I uploaded all our regulations and you can ask it questions. What is the offset for an agriculturally zoned blah, blah, blah? It's a virtual Darren. And,
Virtual Darren.
and
Better than Google.
See you, Darren.
basically it's,
To zoom into the meeting.
it does AI for whatever documents you upload and not the entire world. It just analyzes the document that you upload. I uploaded all the regulations. I uploaded the minutes from our last meeting from YouTube. And I was saying, well, what was the discussion about septic fields? And it, dumps out all the stuff about septic fields. It's not perfect, but when you can't remember, it was kind of fun. So I, I think there are ways and ways for us to try and stay on top of this that will help us as the world moves faster than the speed of typing.
Paul, I've got one suggestion on G.
Yes.
Causing all public notice of hearing as required by law or by Board of Commission rules to be given. And that really addresses some of the things we want to put on social media and those kind of things. I don't think we should just say as required by law. It's also required by whatever Board of Commissioners want us to do.
That sounds good. Anything else on secretary? We can move along. So I thought this would be the fast one. Meetings. Number one, regular meetings will be held on the second Tuesday of each month in the County Commissioners Room, Linn County Courthouse Annex, or other location as approved by the Planning Commission. Two, the place and time may be changed by a majority vote of the commission at least 7 days prior to the change. A, notice of the change shall be delivered to all members, and notice of the change shall be published in the official county newspaper. And I would add something to that, whether it's BCC rules or social media. We need something more than the Linn County News, especially given our recent experience with the solar stuff. How that should read, I don't know. I just put a note there.
Actually, you gotta put the Linn County Journal too, 'cause we are an official online newspaper.
Yeah. Three, we'll come back to B. Three, the chairperson may cancel the regular meeting for the following reasons. A, it is determined that a quorum will not be present. B, no subjects are scheduled for the agenda. And C, other reasonable circumstances.
Sounds good.
And then four, special meetings of the planning commission for obtaining public opinion on an issue, discussion of a particular problem with interested parties may be called by the chairperson or in his absence by the vice chairperson. Notice of special meetings shall be given by the secretary to the members of the commission at least 10 days prior to such meeting and shall state the purpose and time of meetings. Five, all regular and special meetings and records shall be open to the public. Six, quorum of the planning commission shall be 5 members. A quorum shall be required to transact the business as set forth on the agenda. If a quorum is not present at any meeting, those present shall continue the meeting at a specific date, time, and location. That's confusing. 7, the order of business shall be as follows: call to order, roll call, approval of minutes, presentation of requests and or petitions on the agenda, old business, new business, adjournment. Number 8, the motion shall be restated by the chairperson before the vote is taken. The name of the maker and seconder of the motion shall be recorded. Number 9, minutes of regular and special meetings shall be reviewed and approved or changed by the membership at the next subsequent regular meeting. Approved minutes shall be signed by the chairperson and secretary. So,
I'm good with all that. I didn't have any changes at all in that section.
do we want to say anything in 2B about either social media, Board of County Commissioners, official outlets? Something beyond Linn County News is what I'm after, to include social media
I
in,
think so.
in anything that would get published.
Well, I was thinking notice of change shall be published as required by law or county commissioners.
Just like we said in
Yep.
3G,
Right.
that makes sense to be consistent.
Yep.
Any other changes to Article 5 meetings? Does anyone historically know what it means to say in 6, that if a quorum is not present at any meeting, those present shall continue the meeting at a specific date, time, and location.
I think what it really means is at a later specific date, time, and
Those who
location.
show up decide when the next meeting is, or the next official meeting. Something like, I just think the wording's funny.
You could say,
Or does it need to be?
shall continue the meeting at a later specified date, time, and location. Or scheduled, or something like that.
How does it read again, Paul?
If a quorum is not present at any meeting, those present shall continue the meeting at a specific date, time, and location. I think it's just the those present that throws me.
At a future, maybe.
At a future agreed upon.
I would say if a quorum is not present, the meeting will be continued at the next scheduled,
I think that's how it should be.
Yeah, I agree.
But
at the next regularly scheduled planning and zoning.
Exactly, exactly. Cut to the quick.
Say that again, Paul.
If a quorum is not present at any meeting, the meeting shall be continued at the next regularly scheduled planning commission meeting.
Well done.
Okay, I feel better. Article 6, voting. An affirmative vote of a majority of a quorum is required to take action of a motion, except that 2, an affirmative vote of a majority of the full planning commission is required for approving subdivision plats and recommending adoption or amendments of the comprehensive plan, zoning regulations, and subdivision regulations.
So an affirmative vote is required.
Yeah, that, of course, that's the paragraph I called Darren on it because it was also confusing. Why do they say quorum in number 1 and full planning commission in number 2? When Gary says they're the same.
it would be a full planning commission if you had a quorum for that meeting.
Right.
Should we just change the language to say quorum?
That would make more sense to me in my simple world.
Got my vote.
Fine.
Of a quorum. Well, then you need to take out accept that because it's not an exception in number 1. If it's still a quorum. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Number 3, all members shall vote when present, except that any member shall automatically disqualify himself or herself from voting on any decision in which there might be a conflict of interest and should state the conflict of interest and should state the nature of the conflict for the minutes. And I lost my 4th page. Oh, there it is. Thank you. And further, should any member abstain from voting, that member's vote shall be considered cast with the majority. Number 4, voice voting is acceptable provided, however, a roll call vote shall be required when called for by any member. Number 5, proxy votes shall not be accepted. Written opinions may be submitted to the chairperson or the secretary for presentation to the planning commission. Any questions or changes to the voting procedures?
I do have a question about disqualification. Let's say if you have a red-headed neighbor that disqualified him recently for, I don't remember what it was for, but is it like an immediate neighbor or what, is it kind of up to the commission?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, my neighbor came in and he wanted to have that kennel and all that stuff and, yeah.
I think I don't know if there's a rule. I think it would be up to you and your conscience in that I can't be objective on this situation.
I live out in the country, and so one neighbor could be a mile away, and I've never met them.
Yeah.
They're like new people, and I don't think I would have a conflict with interest with them because I don't know them. But like a more distant neighbor is a family member, and it kind of just depends on the person, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's just an ethical issue. You got to decide from your own mind and as a responsible member, whether that's a conflict of interest or not. And you just, it's a judgment call, but it's still,
I think I know Darren's planning a planning and zoning 101 class in the future that will address some ethics. Right?
Yes.
It does address ethics, right? So, I think that might clarify some things.
The only thing that wouldn't be sort of a gray area would be if it was a monetary type thing. You know, if you had some kind of monetary connection with it. So,
Yeah.
I would think that'd be like an automatic disqualifier.
right.
It's going to be up to you and your conscience. So, Article 7, anything else on Article 6? We're voting.
Is there a particular legal reason that I'm not aware of why an abstention vote would go to the majority?
Nobody knows that.
I think you just got to decide how you want to handle that vote. And just as long as you have it written down and agreed to, that's what you do. I don't think anybody's forced us into any particular action at all.
It's
Or
different.
you're abstaining because you don't want your vote counted.
You should walk out of the room and just
I'm not here for 5 minutes.
In my experience historically with like Senate and Congress and stuff, it's more of a political statement they're trying to make. Like, I don't want to affiliate myself with this bill, but I'm not going to work against you. And I don't know.
I think there's been twice since I've been on the commission where we've had somebody abstain and it was a tie vote. So what you do, there's not a majority. It's tied. So it just remains a tie. In those two instances, we just let it remain a tie. And the mission failed because it didn't pass a majority. I think it works.
Article 7, recommendation, the planning commission shall authorize a member of the planning commission, that's confusing. Authorize a member of the planning commission or staff, to appear before the governing body for the purpose of reporting recommendations of the planning commission. Basically, we can volunteer someone to step up to the mic. Article 8, agenda subjects. Any interested party may request a place on the agenda of the planning commission meeting. A copy of the agenda shall ordinarily be mailed to the members of the planning commission so that they may review at least 3 days prior to the meeting. That has been outdated.
I've got a couple of amendments to that one.
Yeah,
I would write, a copy of the agenda shall be ordinarily, and then insert, and if possible, made available, not mailed, made available, because, who says we got to mail it? Just made available to the members or the planning commission so that they may review them at least 3 days prior to the meeting, or how many ever days we decide. So after ordinarily, insert and if possible, and strike mailed and made, and write made available.
right. Should number 1 say who? It doesn't say who they should tell they want to be on the agenda. Any interested party may request a place upon the agenda of a planning commission meeting by contacting planning zoning director, maybe.
There you go.
I mean, this makes it, they could throw a paper airplane with their name on it. I think it would just be clear to say by contacting the planning and zoning director. All right.
You know, it may not always be the director. It might be somebody else. So you might want to say, agenda of the planning commission meeting by the appropriately assigned person. And that way, if it changes, you don't have to go back and change your code.
In that case, if it's not Darren, Darren will know who to send it.
Exactly.
One other addition I was wondering about is to somewhere put it, at least down on paper, what our gallery guidelines are. Because they don't know and we don't know.
Right.
So it gets a little twisty.
I mean, we know historically, but, generally it's address your comments to the committee, keep it to 5 minutes.
Speak at the podium.
Yeah, don't, it's not between,
That's a good idea.
but that's probably a little more of a paragraph than we may have stomach for tonight.
I can put something together.
Okay.
We're trying to conduct the galleries, I would understand.
Yeah, just so that we know, I mean, if Elizabeth fills in, and it's like, ooh, this is the first time I've ever done this, what's the rules again? At least somewhere it's written down.
But what we might want to say is in the month of January, the commission members will establish rules for the gallery every January, because it'll change. 1 year we'll not want this, and the next year we'll decide that's okay. Some new stuff may come in. It gives us a chance to revise this every January.
Right.
Just like Paul said, it. Let's say Elizabeth comes in, and I know she knows all this, but let's say the vice chair hasn't been to meetings a lot. It's a good idea to say what we do, because that you have the people that are for it speak and the people that are against it speak, because sometimes we forget that every now and then. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
And this might be a kind of gray area of what we've been doing with solar recently, is having someone come up and sit with the board, but they're not part of the board. And they're not even part of the ad hoc committee. So I kind of wonder whether we need to mention that.
well, I
at
think
the
that,
discretion of.
That's the chairman's job.
Right.
Slap the gavel, say, excuse me, you need to get back in the gallery.
right.
Sometimes it's handy, and sometimes they.
Our
they
guide,
kind
you
of
need to say our guidelines
do
say,
it, and that's not okay. I said sometimes it's kind of handy to have someone sit down, because it's an empty gallery, and you might as well just sit where we can all hear you.
And record what you're saying.
Or with Mr. Kopp, who couldn't hear us, and we needed to be condensed, but anyway, that was different circumstances.
I mean, I do think last week, was it? When Ally said up here, she's supposed to be the alternate, and then she was speaking a lot of the time too. So, I mean, that was sort of out of line there. Just like when the solar people come up here and sit, I mean, if they're asked something, then they can answer, but, just otherwise it's the people who are at the meeting. So,
I think someone should have to ask them directly to come sit down, and if they're not asked, then they should stay at the podium.
but there should be a microphone up there for them, so we don't have to move the microphone back and forth.
Okay, with that, is everybody comfortable moving on to the comprehensive plan?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna read, do you want me to read the whole thing?
No, so, come on, can I,
You want to review?
so I've put together a short version of the purpose of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Instead of sitting here, because I've got 4 pages written, I can just put that in a draft and just send it out so everybody can read it. Is that?
Unless you just want to hit the high points.
Well, all of it's highway.
All the time.
You're talking about the stuff we talked about with finances, just some of the
Yeah.
planning
and the
zoning
pur-
101,
And the purpose of the planning and zoning,
land use.
land use,
Landowners' rights.
why, the purpose of it, what you're looking for, comprehensive plan. I mean, I've got, like I said, 4 pages, and it goes into legalities. I've just got a lot of stuff.
You know, I did a review of this afternoon in my copious spare time, since I'm retired. And I couldn't think of anything I really thought we should be doing differently because it was laid out and approved. I mean, we can't go in there and say, okay, we're going to change what we're doing. But I do think there's several things that we need to keep our eye on. And I went through and wherever I saw one of those, I made a check mark. And I wouldn't mind doing a document and send it to Darren and say, here's the stuff in the comprehensive plan I think we ought, as a commission, keep our eye on. And I'd be glad to do that tomorrow. And
Right, and I use the comprehensive plan a lot when I put my staff reports together. And so that's why sometimes it'll say staff approves and you all look at it like.
Well, it
Just
the other
because
thing-
it came up recently, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
One thing that would help, the maps are really fuzzy. If, especially with the plat, you know, and being a half mile from where we already said we were gonna allow residential build out. And to know a little better where that is, other than zooming in on that PDF file.
So, and also I had Pam do this and I can have her make a bigger one. On the future land use map, there's only like certain roads. I think it's got 69 highway on it. I had her do an overlay of the roads, like what you're talking about, Paul.
Right.
It shows that road up against that rural residential future use. Instead of going, it's about a half mile, it actually shows the road. So that made a lot of difference. So I can get that out. to
And
all of
actually,
you,
what,
too.
the power plant's in industrial, right? I mean, it doesn't show it being industrial.
So the power plant is in industrial,
But it doesn't show.
but a lot of the area for some reason is right around the power plant is rural residential, which makes not a lot of sense.
Yeah. I'm just looking at it.
Are you seeing what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah. But you know, a more detailed map like you talked about.
Yeah, like all this area
Yeah.
right here. I mean, there's already industrial in there.
Right.
And I don't know why that's set aside for rural residential. And I also, there's a couple of places like down in here that's zoned industrial already. And it's not even shown.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, ask Pam about that. Did you ask Pam about that?
No, I did not ask her about that yet. And I never get this right. IBT or ITB?
IBTF.
IBT, I think Pam just printed what they suggested.
Right. I don't think that,
I wasn't here, so I don't know the answer to that.
So I think in general with the comprehensive plan, kind of like what Richard's talking about, we need to be familiar with it. It needs to be part of our thought process so that we're not having to second guess when somebody comes and says, you know, I want to build a tower here or something, that it's just got to be part of our process in knowing, being familiar with it. Also, Article 1, which is a lot of planning and zoning 101, I think we need to be familiar with it, which is some of what Darren's talking about. Why are we here? What is our height and width and breadth and depth of our jurisdiction? Some of that is summarized in Article 1. of the new regulations. And then anywhere on the internet, grab a summary of Robert's Rules of Order. I hadn't dealt with Robert's Rules of Order since high school. So, and they vary depending on which ones you grab. This, I think when Bobby Johnson, or whoever, Bobby,
Johnson.
yeah, he handed me this when I came on, so. Be familiar with Robert's Rules of Order if you're not already. Because, Dave Berglund would pull something out, and he'd say something, I'm like, what was that? I'd like to propose an amendment to something. What are you talking about? You knew the rules, the rules, you can do stuff,
Good memory.
you can do stuff. So,
But I think the thing we always need to look at is the scenic beauty. We realize how important that is, but it includes a lot of things besides the solar. I mean, like, I remember one where people wanted to build 3 houses down 7 Highway, on the highway. And I think about how when people come down to the Arts and Crafts Fair, you just have, all of a sudden all you have is houses and there's no scenic beauty there anymore. So it's not just solar.
yeah.
It's other things too, and feedlots, but. Oh,
Yeah,
You do that,
huh?
it's a tightrope.
No, but we can't put some regulation. We can't.
Anyone have anything else?
Oh, there's a difference in.
We'll hopefully have these rules changes ready to vote on Tuesday.
Got a story coming in.
That's all I have. Still gonna make it on.
So Paige is here on Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Captain?
I've already had phone calls.
Awesome.
All right, well,
I said, well, I don't even know this.
So this stuff that I got written out, I apologize for not having it typed up and ready for you guys, but I'll just throw it in the share file so everybody can read it. I'll send an email saying that I put it in there. But it just short, it goes over the comp plan, the purpose of the comp plan, how planning and zoning uses the comp plan. Health, safety, and welfare is a big deal. The 8 golden rules, talks about, how planning helps balance the county, protects the public. It talks about how a planning commission should plan, local reviews of projects, what is the purpose of a planning official, how it ties to the Board of County Commissioners, and that's an advisory board. It talks about it. I was gonna say something, but I can't remember what it was.
You get us the updated bylaws that we're gonna vote on before Tuesday.
I will try to, and the only reason why I say try, since it's bylaws, I don't know if an attorney should look at it after it's written.
probably.
So,
Well, and I can help you at least do the typing part.
yeah, if you want to type it out, I don't know how this comes into play. Burton may be the interim attorney right now. And I don't know that for sure. I need to talk to David. So it may be something that he could look over and say, sure, and I could have it ready for Tuesday. So if you've got,
I suppose we'll. I think you're right, it needs to be checked off. You can't get it checked off and vote on for next time.
right,
Yeah. It's been 3 months already.
because I know attorneys like to use certain words for certain reasons. I just want to make sure it's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'll find out, because if I can take it, if I can have Burton read them over and just say, yeah, this is good, but I don't know that, I don't know the answer to that. there anything that I can help you guys do?
To me, one of the weakest links in the whole solar experience has been the back and forth. And we've been, are we still on? We've been communicating like junior high kids passing. It just get really communication between us, between the board, you know, like tonight. What do they, is there something tangible, a report that they are expecting from us regarding the forum?
You're talking about the county commissioners?
Yes, regarding the forum. Nothing was asked that I recall, but it feels like the onus is on us to deal with all of the stuff that came in and at least have the discussion that we had. That's just an example. Can we formalize communication between us? Should communication between us be in writing?
I think you're on something there. I know that when the commissioners asked the planning and zoning to review the first set of regulations, it came to you in writing. I wasn't on the board, I wasn't on the committee,
Yeah.
but it came to you in writing. They did. I think anything from that commission, about what it is, needs to come in writing, because there's different interpretations that happen. It doesn't always make it to this committee the same way that commissioners maybe meant to be. And let me back up a second. Sometimes you'll have disagreement within the commissioners. I mean, one commissioner will be saying, do this, the other one will be saying, do that. I think we've got to ask them to put it in writing, and the three of them agree. So when it gets here, it's clear.
And it just, I mean, it's another thing on Darren's list.
It's okay.
No, not asking for it.
Oh.
When they communicate to you and you communicate to us, it's another thing on your list. It's another telephone that just gets lost in translation. And it's, you know, it's just unnecessary.
Well, even when they sent back Regina's rescue deal, they sent it back in writing, which Gary did.
Right. So
That way, it's a clear message from that. From the county commission. I hate to make it more
yeah, you're gonna add a week to.
complicated. I've seen so many messages that weren't clear.
Well, I think the audience, when you watch the commission meeting, you really can't tell what the message is sometimes, because there's three different people saying,
Yeah.
you know,
And stuff will get interjected and it'll come out of order, and which is fine as long as David or somebody can get it written down so that we have bullet points to drive.
he usually doesn't cover that. I mean, he'll say things sensitive, but he doesn't put in. I mean, that was what Jerry just.
Anyway, so that would be my request that,
Well, when I asked him something coming from planning and zoning, I can just request it in writing.
I think that would protect all of us.
And the expectation be we'd return it in writing.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Anything else?
It's a company car.
Any more movie quotes you can lay on us tonight?
Not right now. Yeah, good example to follow.
Oh, I know what I want to ask. Is the format that I use in the SharePoint with the date and the folders okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Well, especially when you mark the next meeting
In red.
red, that helps.
Well, yeah, so everybody's okay with that format?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good.
Darren, thank you for all you do.
How you doing, Mike?
We're all in this together, but you get to go first.